A reading from the first letter of Paul to the Corinthians. Brothers and sisters, the cup of blessing that we bless, is it not a participation in the blood of Christ? The bread that we break, is it not a participation in the body of Christ? Because the loaf of bread is one, we, though many, are one body, for we all partake of the one loaf. The word of the Lord.
Our second reading for this Corpus Christi Sunday comes from the first letter of Paul to the Corinthians. And so now we have a more explicitly Eucharistic theme in the second reading, where St. Paul talks about the cup of blessing and the bread. And we are told by St. Paul that this cup of blessing, what it contains is not just ordinary wine. It is the blood of Christ. And this bread that has become Eucharist is not just bread. It is the body of Christ. It is precisely the mystery that we are celebrating this Sunday. The mystery of the presence of Christ as bread of life, as the cup of salvation in the Eucharist. But St. Paul, aside from proclaiming that the Eucharist is really the blood, the body of Christ, points to another dimension of this mystery that is central to our lives. Let us recall that the Corinthians were beset by one malady, the malady of division. They were divided among themselves, and they were even divided along loyalty lines. Some were for Apollos, some were for Cephas, some were for Paul, and that affected their Eucharistic practice. Now, St. Paul, addressing this community that is divided among themselves, and so for him, this community is not living up to what the Eucharist demands, the celebration of the body and blood of Christ. He reminds them that the sharing in the one cup is a sharing in the blood of Christ, and the sharing in the one bread is a sharing in the body of Christ. One cup, one bread. And because they share in the one cup and in the one bread, they, the community, become one body, the body of Christ. So here we find St. Paul talking about the connection between the Eucharistic mystery in the Eucharistic species, the blood, the body of Christ, and the formation of the community as the communal body of Christ. Remember, the same term is used, body of Christ, used of the bread now transformed and of the community that is supposed to share in the one loaf. Because they share in the one loaf, they share in the one life of Christ, they share in the one body of Christ, they become one body too. And this is a challenge not only to the Corinthians, but to all of us who are celebrating today Corpus Christi. Our Eucharistic practice and devotion, in the end, should include the formation of a community that can proclaim to the world, because we share in the one body of Christ, we have become also one body. Especially in our times, where even here in the Philippines, the tendency towards divisiveness is very strong. And even worldwide, even if we're talking about globalization, one human family without borders, wow, we are very much aware of ethnic, political, religious, economic divisions. we Christians who profess our faith in God, and we who profess that in the Eucharist we are given one bread, who is Jesus, to form us as one body. Let us proclaim to the world that it is possible to really live and act as one, united in Jesus, nurtured, nourished by His body and blood. Jesus is not divided, as St. Paul says, and so His body, the community, should not be divided too. So let our Eucharistic devotion and practice include this communal and social dimension.